This video contains fictional depictions of blood and gore, as well as spoilers for various Wolfenstein titles. I recently replayed Wolfenstein The Old Blood, the prequel to the New Order, the sort of but not really remake of Return to Castle Wolfenstein. And it was then when I was reminded of just how often rats appear in the game. Well, I say rats, but it's really only rat singular. Almost every single cutscene has one scurrying alongside BJ, the protagonist, a player character. It's there as he gets dragged into the dungeon of the titular castle, it follows him into an elevator and even exits alongside him, and somehow catches up with him later in the nearby town. BJ notices this, but never comments on it. But it can't all be the same rat, can it? It's the only one we ever see, but it would make sense for a single little rodent to stick around for so long. Then again, this is the same game where the town drunkard falls asleep in one place, only to reappear a few minutes later in a completely different part of the city, despite you having taken a boat to get there. And eventually, I realized that it doesn't really matter whether it's the same rat or multiple rats, or if the rat even exists in the first place. There's a reason it's always exactly where you are. The rat is you, and you are it. Alright, but why a rat then? Have you seen what BJ looks like? He's so massive that you could fit 2 other men inside of it. You know what, scratch that. He's an absolute powerhouse, routinely surviving things no other human would be able to, while wielding, sometimes even dual-wielding weapons that most people can't even dream of carrying comfortably. So why isn't he depicted as an animal which reflects that, like a dog or a bear or, dare I say, a wolf? Well, that's because his enemies, the Nazis, or as I like to call them, P-babies, are the wolves. This is quite clearly stated within the game itself by the aforementioned drunkard.
Hörst du nicht das Schnappen ihrer Kiefer? Die Wölfe werden uns alle fressen, wenn wir nichts tun.
If you've been following my Quirks of German X series for a bit, you may also recall that the German ports even censored all P-babies as wolves across multiple titles, even replacing hooked crosses with wolves' heads. No, as awesome as wolves may be, they are, unequivocally, the bad guys here. It's also important to keep the time frame of the games in mind. The Wolfenstein series takes place during World War II, as well as a fictional future where P-baby Germany won and controls the rest of the planet. And what are rats? Cute, playful, and incredibly smart critters? Well, yes, but I'm more talking about how most people have perceived them throughout history. As undesirables. When you have rats in the basement, you have an infestation. They crawl through places where you don't want them to, they eat your food, even spread diseases. They need to be exterminated before they increase in numbers. And that's precisely how real Nazis saw and see non-Aryans as so-called deviants, even referring to them as vermin. BJ Blazkowicz, despite looking like the Aryan ideal, has in actuality a Jewish Polish mother. So to them, he is a rat.
Ich will, dass jeder verfluchte Einzelne von euch das anatomische Theater angreift. Dort ist eine dreckige Ratte auf der Flucht. Ich will das Schwein tot sehen. Los!
The graphic novel Maus, which tells the real-life experiences of a Holocaust survivor, even incorporated that motif into the art style itself. Jewish people are depicted, like the name suggests, as mice. And they too have to hide under the floorboards and in the walls, away from the Nazis, depicted as cats. In The Old Blood, BJ literally lives up to this reputation, as he climbs into holes, walks over rafters, swims through sewers, and even hides in the shadows, away from dangerous eyes. The game encourages stealth, getting your enemies before they get you, without alerting anyone else. Because that might mean extermination. But it's not the only Wolfenstein to do this. The New Order and its sequel, the New Colossus, both share this gameplay, with the latter even giving you the ability to stuff your whole body into the tiniest of holes. Even the titles by other developers feature similar moments, as many levels are set in dank caves, crypts and ruins, or give you the option to avoid encounters entirely by detouring through the sewage system or climbing over roofs. Always out of sight, out of mind. And how does the very first game in the series, not counting the Apple II ones, begin? In a dark dungeon after having sneakily taken out the guard. And your only option is to push through confusing labyrinthine stages. Like a rat in a maze. But if there's one thing these creatures are good at, it's being tenacious. Rat infestations can be hard to get rid of, precisely because they're so good at hiding in places you can't reach easily, which is also reflected throughout the modern games. In the New Order, BJ wakes up in the 1960s, decades after the PE babies have already won the war. Together with his Jewish girlfriend Anya, he decides to join the resistance, which is filled with other quote undesirables like people of color, queer people, and ones with disabilities. And this literal underground resistance is located within the sewers of Berlin, the heart of Germany. A bunch of rats hiding under the floorboards. And even once they get flushed out near the end of the game, they manage to sneak on board of a massive submarine where they then live in the sequel. Can't get rid of them. Rats always come back. Just like they do in the Old Blood. Even if it makes no sense for a rat to be there, there it is. And I think that on some level, BJ is very much aware of this connection between them and himself. In the New Colossus, we wind time back to his childhood, of when he excitedly showed his friend a rat he found drowning in a bucket. To him, it's hilarious. Rats are filthy and disgusting, he says. Well, in the original at least. We're not listening to the terrible German dub. So seeing one of them drown is not only funny to him, but beneficial. But his friend, a black girl named Billy, screams at him with tears in her eyes, and it's then when he realizes his mistake. Unlike BJ, Billy faces daily harassment just because of who she is. Even his own racist father forbids him from spending time with her. I believe in this moment, something in his mind clicks. And he makes the connection between seeing an innocent creature fighting for its life and his best friend doing the same. So he kicks over the bucket and the rat survives. He recognized it's important to rethink your own beliefs and see how they affect others, and did the right thing. And from this point onwards, especially during the war, he begins to see himself as a rat and embraces that role. It turns into his fighting spirit, not just that he's fighting for his own life, but for the lives of other people. Is it any wonder that the rat appears the moment he got thrown into prison? That one of the first things he can do there is get bitten by it, almost as if it's BJ's wake-up call. If there's ever a time you need to be a rat, to be a beast, a monster, something that's hated by so many people, and which yet persists, never gives up, always fights back, it's now. The Old Blood ends with a quote by BJ in which he seems to be referring to the uncertain threats ahead. But I don't think he realized at the time how much it actually applied to himself instead.
The monster never dies, no matter how many times you kill it. Just sheds its skin and changes form.